You know what kills more dreams than failure? Silence. That moment when you get an idea, you feel the fire inside you, and then you do nothing. 3 days later, the fire is gone. That's why psychologists talk about something called the 72-hour rule. If you don't act on an idea within 72 hours, chances are you'll never act on it at all. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll start tomorrow"? Maybe it was a workout plan, maybe a side hustle, maybe reaching out to someone important. And tomorrow came, but you didn't move. Then another day passed. And suddenly, that dream felt heavier, harder, almost impossible. It's not because you're lazy. It's because the brain is wired to protect you from discomfort. The longer you wait, the louder that inner voice gets. It's risky. It's too much. Maybe later. Here's the truth. The brain loves momentum. Action creates energy. Even the smallest step, sending an email, writing down a plan, making that phone call, signals to your mind, this matters. I'm serious. That's why the 72-hour rule is powerful. It forces you to break the cycle of waiting. Imagine planting a seed. If you leave it sitting on the table, it dries out. But if you put it in soil within hours, water it, give it light, it grows. Your ideas are the same. They need action fast, or they die in the dark. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us don't fail because we're incapable, we fail because we wait. Waiting feels safe, but in reality, it's the most dangerous habit you can build. This is how the brain tricks us. It convinces us that waiting is harmless. But waiting is like rust. It doesn't destroy the metal overnight, but slowly, silently, it eats away until nothing is left. Psychologists call this the intention-action gap. The longer that gap stays open, the weaker your desire becomes. Your brain starts building excuses. I'll start when I have more money, when I have more time, when I feel ready. But here's the secret, you'll never feel ready. Readiness is a myth. Action creates readiness, not the other way around. That's why the 72-hour rule is so powerful. It's not about perfection, it's about momentum. If you take even one small step within 3 days, you close that gap. You tell your brain, this is real. This matters. And suddenly, the excuses lose their power. Success isn't built on giant leaps. It's built on tiny moves that create momentum. And momentum is addictive. Psychologists call this the activation energy principle. Just like lighting a fire, the hardest part is the spark. Once the flame is alive, it feeds itself. That's why the 72-hour rule works. It forces you to strike that spark before the idea dies out. Think of it like pushing a car. The first shove feels impossible. But once the wheels start rolling, every push after that feels easier. That's how your brain works with goals. The first step feels heavy, but once you move, your brain rewires itself to keep going. And here's the best part. Momentum doesn't care how small the step is. Writing one sentence, making one call, doing one push-up, it all counts. Because the brain doesn't measure the size of the action, it measures the fact that you acted. That's enough to break the cycle of hesitation. Howard Schultz grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Brooklyn. His family struggled financially, and he often talked about how he felt trapped by the limits of his environment. But one day, while working for a small coffee company, he had an idea. What if coffee wasn't just a drink, but an experience? Most people would have sat on that idea, waiting for the right time. But Schultz didn't wait. Within days, literally within that 72-hour window, he flew to Italy to study coffee culture firsthand. He didn't have the money, he didn't have the backing, but he had momentum. When he came back, he pitched the idea to investors. Guess what? They rejected him. Over 200 times. Most people would have quit. But because he had already taken that first step, he couldn't stop. The momentum carried him forward. Eventually, he got the funding. And that tiny coffee company transformed into Starbucks, the global brand we know today. Back in the late 1970s, Jobs wasn't the legend we think of today. He was just a young guy with big ideas, working out of a garage with his friend Steve Wozniak. They had this vision, personal computers in every home. At that time, People laughed. But Jobs didn't wait. Within days of seeing the potential, he acted. He started building prototypes, pitching to investors, and knocking on doors. He didn't have the money, he didn't have the credibility, but he had momentum. And it wasn't smooth. He faced rejection after rejection. He was even pushed out of Apple, his own company. But because he had already taken those first steps, he couldn't stop. He founded Next, bought Pixar, and eventually came back to Apple. That comeback gave us the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the very devices that changed the way we live. All of it started because he refused to wait. He acted within hours of his vision, not years. That's why Steve Jobs is remembered as a pioneer, not just a dreamer. So here's the lesson. Greatness doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment. It comes from acting before the fire dies. Howard Schultz didn't wait. Steve Jobs didn't wait. And neither should you. Your brain is your sketchbook. Every idea, every habit, every spark, it's a sketch waiting to be drawn. But sketches don't become masterpieces unless you act. That's what we do here at Mind Sketchbook. We talk psychology, brain habits, motivation, tools to help you sketch the life you want. So don't just watch. Take one step within 72 hours. And if you want more stories, more strategies, more fire for your journey, hit subscribe. Because here, we don't just dream, we act.